everyone. Welcome to another episode of What the Dementia by Bambu Care. I'm your host, Brianna Wilson. I am a certified dementia practitioner and the founder of Bambu Care. So, I noticed that we have a lot of new listeners, and so I wanted to take a brief moment to say welcome and that I truly hope that you find our What the Dementia podcast helpful along your journey. If you ever have any questions or anything, you can always email us at podcast@whatthedementia.com, or you can leave us a voice message at whatthedementia.com, okay? Now, before we get started, an important announcement that I want to make is that we finally have a blog. Yes. Now, I will say that much of the content is similar to what you've already heard on our podcast if you've been following us for a while, or if you've caught up on our previous episodes. But I wanted to make sure that for people who learn better by reading versus listening, that there is a resource for you guys too. So you can check that out at letsbambu.com/blog. Okay. We also still have our Grow with Gratitude self-care and gratitude journals that were created specifically for dementia caregivers, and those are still available on our website. Okay. And we also have a couple of freebies available on our website as well. So if you are interested in checking that out, everything can be found on letsbambu.com, and all of the links will be left in the podcast notes as well. For today's topic, we are going to be talking about a touchy but important topic that I know a lot of caregivers experience, and that is ambiguous loss. Now, if you've never heard of ambiguous loss, there are two main types of ambiguous loss. But in efforts to keep relevant to what we're going to be talking about and to kind of lessen the confusion, ambiguous loss is essentially the mourning of a person who is still physically present. So the person is still physically there, but you realize that your partner's changing, your relationship with them is changing, you're changing, everything is changing. And you are beginning to mourn the person you once knew, the future you once saw, the relationship dynamic you once had, the conversations and experiences you once shared. And you may even begin to mourn the life that you once had now that your days have become increasingly consumed by the care needs of your partner, okay? And so ambiguous loss can be very overwhelming and confusing, and many times caregivers feel guilty or ashamed for feeling this way because it's like, well, why do I feel like this when they're still here? Why do I feel like I've already lost them? Sometimes it's called the long goodbye because you feel like you've already started saying goodbye, and it lasts varying levels of time depending on your person's course, but it just kind of drags on and you feel kind of icky throughout the process, okay? But let me tell you that feeling this way is completely normal, and there is no reason to feel guilty or ashamed about it, okay? Now, grieving is a non-linear process, and there are some grief models that may help you wrap your mind around like what you're experiencing. But what I've found is that grief is weird, and it's really an individual experience if we're being honest. And unfortunately, with ambiguous loss, it can really kind of further complicate the grieving process. And sometimes you'll also hear ambiguous loss referred to as the goodbye without leaving. So when people refer to dementia, they sometimes call it the long goodbye. And when we're talking specifically about ambiguous loss, sometimes it's referred to as the goodbye without leaving, okay? And because your loved one is still physically present, it's almost like a constant reminder of what is and has been lost, okay? And so for many people, the progressive deterioration of their loved one can be painful to watch and really wrap their heads around. And there really is no time nor space to create like an emotional detachment as you would once someone passes away. And you aren't constantly faced with the reality every single day, right? It gives you a chance to mourn, to grieve, and to eventually come to acceptance that that person is no longer here. But with ambiguous loss, the person is still there, and you see them, depending on your situation, either every day or pretty often, or you at least know that they're still wherever. So maybe they're in like a memory care facility. They're still there, but to you, they're no longer who they were, and your relationship with them has changed, okay? So the point is that no matter if your loved one has passed or if they are still present, but you deeply feel the loss of your loved one, your grief is validated, and it's okay to feel however you are feeling. Okay? Now, because I do like to be fully transparent, dealing with grief is not my specialty. But I do want to share a few tips if you feel yourself struggling with this, okay? So, tip number one is that make sure that you allow yourself to feel all of your emotions. Dementia brings up a wide range of emotions, some that you may not have even known that you had. And it's important that you allow yourself to experience them all and be kind with yourself during this process. Don't feel bad for feeling bad. It's okay. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's okay to not be okay. And that can apply with so many things going on in your life, but definitely when it comes with coping with the journey of dementia. Like, it's okay to admit to yourself, like, you know what? I'm not handling this well. I'm having a really hard time. Tip number two is to find a support group if you haven't already, so that you can vent, you can talk, you can ask questions, because you're going to want to find someone who understands. And this can be family or friends, but oftentimes you will find greater comfort in talking to someone going through a similar situation because they can relate better. Sometimes when you talk to family or friends who don't quite understand, they can make you feel kind of worse about your situation because they don't understand why you feel that way. They don't quite get it, okay? So you want to talk to someone who gets it a little bit more, okay? Tip number three is to keep a journal, and you want to express the good and bad. And if you are having a hard time noticing the good moments of the dementia care journey, I highly recommend you invest in our Grow with Gratitude book, which, like I said, can be found on our website, letsbamboo.com, under the shop tab. The whole reason that I even created this journal is because I really wanted to help care partners discover the beauty that can lie within the dementia care journey. I wanted them to be able to connect with their partner in new ways, and I really wanted them to find balance in caring for themselves while caring for their partner, because it's very easy to become imbalanced, especially when you are experiencing all these different emotions and you're taking on the challenging task of taking care of someone else while still trying to live your life, you know? Now, tip number four is to take respite before you feel like you need it. Because usually, if you wait till when you're like yearning for respite, which is basically just kind of taking a break from your caregiving duties, it's going to be too late. You're going to be so overwhelmed by that point that once you even take it, it's not going to feel like enough. So you have to make sure that you take respite before you feel like you need it. And you also want to make sure that you're taking time for self-care and that you're consciously making that time and not trying to find that time. And there's a difference, because sometimes when you try to find time for self-care, you'll realize that you can never find it. You have to consciously make time for self-care every day, even if it's just 5 to 15 minutes. What is something small that I can do today to show myself a little bit of love? What is something I can do today to bring myself some joy? What's something that can make me laugh, okay? You want to try not to wallow in your pain and despair for too long, because although it's okay to feel those emotions, the longer you stay there, the harder it's going to be to come up for air and actually take care of yourself. And that's why a lot of people struggle, because let's be honest, it's so much easier to be sad and just feel how we're feeling than to try to take the effort to climb out of it. And that's with anything, but especially when your time is being pulled strongly in a different direction, which in this case is caring for your partner, okay? So give yourself that break, give yourself some space away from your partner, enlist family, friends, neighbors, community organizations or foundations, contact your local Alzheimer's organization and see if they have any recommendations or valuable resources for you, okay? And then tip number 5 is that if nothing seems to be helping, no matter what you've tried, please, please seek professional help. Find a grief therapist or counselor in your local area or someone who's available online if that's more convenient and probable, okay? Because even though some people don't recognize ambiguous loss as a form of grieving, it really is. There are some professionals who are skilled in handling that type of grief, and there's some that aren't. So you're going to want to make sure that you do your research, but definitely find yourself some help before you get too deep into it, okay? So that really wraps up what I wanted to share with you guys for this episode. I really just wanted to give a name to what some of you may be experiencing and to let you guys know that if you do feel this way, that it's perfectly fine, it's perfectly okay, that there's no need to feel any guilt or shame about it, okay? So I really do hope that this podcast was interesting and informative and that you learned something of value. If you have anything that you would like to share with us or any questions that you would like to ask, you can always send us a voice message at whatthedementia.com or send us an email at podcast@whatthedementia.com. Thank you guys so much for joining us on another episode of What the Dementia by Bambu Care. We look forward to catching you on the next episode. Take care, and until next time, stay strong, care on, and remember, you are not alone. Bambu Care is always here.